Greetings, and welcome back to our Standing Watch program. Have you committed a hate crime recently? Now, that's perhaps a stunning and provocative question. And of course, your immediate answer would be, no, absolutely not. And maybe you haven't when it comes to the definition of a hate crime as it is being used in several statutes around the world. But maybe you have in your mind, or maybe you have become a victim of those who charge you with having committed a hate crime. Now, what am I talking about? Let me just first of all very briefly talk about hate crimes as we are confronted with them around the world. Let me read to you an article from WorldNet Daily, which was published on June 5 about a situation in Canada. It says, a priest is being investigated as a potential criminal under a federal hate crimes law for quoting from the Bible. It goes on to say that this particular priest defended the Roman Catholic Church's teaching on marriage during Canada's same-sex marriage debate, quoting extensively from the Bible and also from Catholic literature. And he believes, as many others do, that marriage is an exclusive union between a man and a woman. Now, this was enough to trigger an investigation against him for committing a hate crime in Canada. But you see, it's not just limited to Canada. Let me read to you from the Telegraph, a British paper, which reported the following on June 2, 2008. A police community support officer ordered 2 Christian preachers to stop handing out gospel leaflets in a predominantly Muslim area of Birmingham. The evangelists say they were threatened with arrest for committing a hate crime. And so then one of the ministers said that they were in a Muslim area and were not allowed to spread the Christian message. The police officer said that they were committing a hate crime by telling the youth to leave Islam. Now, the police officer was not a lonely figure in this case because the whole police force subsequently refused to apologize. Now, that's what is happening in Great Britain. What about Continental Europe? Well, here we have heard perhaps, and you might have heard about the conviction of Brigitte Bardot for allegedly committing a hate crime. According to the Associated Press, which ran an article on June 3, she was persecuted and then was held guilty because she wrote a letter to Sarkozy, who is now the president of France, saying that Muslims should stun their animals before they sacrifice them. Now, if that is sufficient, and perhaps she said more in the letter, but if that is sufficient to commit a hate crime and be felt guilty about it, then you can see where that's going. Many countries in Europe have these hate crime statutes on the book, and it appears that it's up to the prosecutor or the judge to decide when a hate crime is committed. And it can be committed if you are in any way offending the racial or religious sensitivities of certain communities. Again, I say, have you committed a hate crime here in the United States of America? Now, we don't have hate crime statutes on the book, but what about the heart and the mind of the people? Recently, the press had a field day talking about a particular televangelist in Texas who had made anti-Catholic remarks for many, many years. But then he endorsed a Republican candidate for presidency, and so then the left liberal media in particular charged the candidate that he did not distance himself from that preacher. And so now notice what happened. A few days after these charges were leveled, the Associated Press reported on May 13, John Hagee, an influential Texas evangelist who endorsed John McCain, apologized to Catholics Tuesday for his stinging criticism of the Roman Catholic Church and for having emphasized the darkest chapters in the history of Catholic and Protestant relations with the Jews. He went on to say, out of a desire to advance a greater unity among Catholics and evangelicals in promoting the common goal and the common good, I want to express my deep regret for any comments that Catholics have found hurtful. He said that, or this article said, that Hagee had cited the Inquisition and the Crusades as evidence of anti-Semitism within the Catholic Church. And he said that I may have contributed to the mistaken impression that the anti-Jewish violence of the Crusades and the Inquisition defines the Catholic Church. It most certainly does not. And this article points out that Hagee has often made references to the apostate church and the great whore, terms that Catholics say are slurs aimed at the Roman Catholic Church. In his letter, Hagee said he now better understood that the book of Revelation's reference to the Catholic Church as the apostate church and the great whore are a rhetorical device long employed in anti-Catholic literature and commentary. He stressed that in his use, neither of these phrases can be synonymous with the Catholic Church. So what we find here is a complete backflip. Something which he had said for many, many years is now being repudiated. Why? Well, the timing couldn't be any worse. I'm not trying to pass any judgment on him as to what the motives are, but I'm just pointing out that if you feel that you are a victim of a hate crime or that you might have perpetrated one, you can easily be persuaded to change your conviction, to change your position. I have seen this happening in big organization not too long ago, which taught a certain doctrine, and then the organization changed their stance on certain things, and the ministers in that organization suddenly changed their stances too, even though they had preached the absolute opposite before. Why did they do it? Were they sincere? Or did they want to maintain and keep a job, a prestige in that organization? Anyways, they lost their jobs anyhow. And so then they joined other organizations which preached what they had originally preached before they changed their preaching. And now they preach that one again. And you have to ask yourself the question, how sincere is all of that? How strongly are they convicted of anything? True ministers of God must stand up for their convictions. The time may come, my friends, where the ideas of hate crime may even go that far that you are not allowed to preach any longer the Word of God as revealed in the Bible. For instance, if you were to say that there is no other way to salvation except through Jesus Christ, something the Bible clearly teaches, would you be accused of committing a hate crime because you are trampling on the sensitivities of non-Christians? Many people, unfortunately, don't even know what their convictions are, what their convictions should be. But we need in this country ministers who stand up for the truth based on their conviction, not being tossed to and fro with every wind of doctrine, every wind of political convenience, because it will become more and more difficult to do that. And we are going to be more and more faced with those who want us to stop preaching the Word of God. Let us make sure, my friends, that we understand what is happening and that we won't give in to that kind of pressure. Thanks very much for watching. Until next time, this is Norbert Link for the Standing Watch program.